So we'll call the Committee of Whole Council meeting for Monday, January 13th to order. Welcome, everyone. We'll begin, as we always do, with the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you. Lawlin. Next is the oath of office. We do hereby accept the office of the council and will diligently, faithfully, and impartially discharge, to the best of our ability, the duties of the office as may be imposed upon us by law. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes? I have one, just the Route 134 discussion. Haven't finished my research on it, and I think I'm going to have a better presentation after the meeting on Thursday night. So I'm going to kick that down the road to next Monday. Everything else will stay the same. Anyone else have any additions or subtractions? If not, can we get a mover?
M 2025-0113-01, that the agenda be adopted as amended with changes.
And a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Statements of conflicts of interest, if any council member does so, just register with the clerk. Presentations, I have one, but I'll wait until we're doing the business of council. There isn't anything else, so I guess we can get right down to that. I won't go to the podium, I'll just stay here. So we'll start with the amalgamation presentation that I have. So we've had some discussions about amalgamation and partial part of a presentation about amalgamation. So I just wanted to give my presentation on amalgamation. I think in the previous two meetings, people who have seen those meetings know where I stand on it. But I've decided to come back to the table and add some research that I've done to back up my argument in my presentation. So I have two. And the first one is from it's an article from a presentation, or I'm not going to say a newspaper, but it is newspaper-like, and it's down towards Moncton, Sackville Way, and this article was written in 2022, so it's a contemporary article. It's not an older article. It's one that's relative, and so I'll start reading it, and then I'll move on to my second one. So this one is titled Municipal Amalgamations Lead to Higher Costs, Experts Warn. The New Brunswick government is pushing ahead with municipal amalgamations in spite of warnings from a chorus of experts that merging local government leads to higher costs and often to higher taxes. All of the academic work on municipal amalgamation has demonstrated that it does not save money, says Jack Novak, professor of local government at Dalhousie University, someone who's quite familiar with the village of Beldoon and our council. He explains that demands for service across amalgamated areas tend to rise along with employee salaries and other administrative costs. Richard Tyndall, retired professor of government in Kingston, Ontario, writes, "Many of us in the academic world have debunked the myth about amalgamation saving money for decades. He adds there are reasons why costs actually rise. Amalgamations bring together municipalities with varying levels of service standard. We correct these disparities by leveling up to the highest existing service standard, he writes. The resulting improvement in services, typically to outlying and more rural areas, is widely welcomed as a byproduct of amalgamation. But such improvements raise costs rather than reducing them. If I go on to another point, he says, amalgamations don't achieve the promised economies of scale and service delivery because the optimum size for delivering municipal services varies widely. Indeed, for services such as policing, there is ample evidence to show that some aspects are best handled by small detachments, whereas areas such as dispatch systems and training facilities are best handled over much larger areas. The increased workload for councillors of enlarged municipalities usually leads to salary increases, in some cases to the addition of support staff for councillors. The net result is no saving from fewer councillors, not that council salaries ever were a significant part of the total cost of the municipal government, which is true. So, finally, in this article, it stated, although nearly every province in Canada has pursued some form of local restructuring over the past 25 years, municipal amalgamation remains a controversial subject, which is true. A vast amount of research has found that consolidation fails to produce promised cost savings, rarely leads to more efficient service delivery, and reduces the ability of citizens to be involved in the life of their local governments. It is no surprise, then, that local restructuring proposals have often been met with stiff resistance from local residents. It also comes as no surprise that many residents argue that their communities were better off prior to amalgamation. That's the first article. The second article is from a CBC News article a few weeks ago, December 28th. Fundy Albert mayor resigns, blaming the province. A mayor in southeastern New Brunswick announced his resignation Friday afternoon, partially putting blame on the provincial government. Bob Rashaw, mayor of Fundy Albert, posted a letter to the social media explaining the issues the municipality had faced with amalgamation within the council. It has become clear to me that I no longer have the confidence and trust of members of council, Rashaw wrote in the letter. Without that, I'm ineffective as a mayor. When reached by phone Saturday, Rashawn declined an interview and would not answer questions about why councillors had lost confidence in him. His letter went on to describe the year since New Brunswick's local government amalgamation in 2023 as turbulent. He said the province did little to assist with challenges such as how to structure local government, managing complex budgets, addressing infrastructure gaps, and planning for the future. In the end, we are left to our own devices with little or no assistance or guidance from provincial government. So that's another contemporary story, and I can tell you, as having had an opportunity to speak with mayors and councillors who have been part of amalgamation, the last one that we had in New Brunswick, many are not happy with the fact that amalgamation took place. So there are two articles, and there were plenty more. And in one, it had described or asked why we continue to look at amalgamation when de-amalgamation tends to be the pattern across Canada. So I'll leave it with that. That's many of the things that are written in both those articles are things that I agree with. And so anyone on council wish to add?
Of course. There's a number of issues within that article that don't pertain to Belledune. You're talking about varying levels of service delivery. There's no disparity between the levels of services in Belledune and the level of services in the neighboring communities. So it's not, we're not leveling up anybody's services or decreasing anybody's services. We're pretty much on par with that. Amalgamation is more about a strategic approach to the challenges that we face, particularly in northern New Brunswick, and as a very small municipality, kind of being swallowed up by neighboring communities. So when you look at population as being part of the formula for services such as seniors' homes or whatever, we don't have the population required, and we are losing out on opportunities because of that. I can understand why you might not think that you're up to the challenge of those types of things, but it's a strategic planning exercise and an information gathering exercise. The articles that you're talking about don't really lend support to we're not talking about the same issues. And as far as the Fundy Albert mayor, it is the lack of confidence of council that led to his resignation, not necessarily amalgamation, and the lack of support by the Department of Local Government for any issues regarding council conflicts, we'll say. And we know that very well because the Department of Local Government has never stepped in to address any of the issues with this council. So again, your second article doesn't really support an argument to not look into amalgamation seriously with neighboring communities.
Councilor Burt?
Well, as of this morning, I had conversations with both councillors representing Bell Bay and Heron Bay, and both those councillors said it is a complete disaster of amalgamation. They are facing skyrocketing cost in policing, skyrocketing. They said they're having huge tax increases from their, and by huge, they were looking, I asked how big that was. They said it looks like about 30 cents, you know, so 30 cents when you're already paying about $1.30, $1.37. That's a huge increase in your tax base because of amalgamation. So as far as those councillors were concerned, the feedback that I got from them was that it has created some division, has created some animosity among some council members, and it has created a lot of static among the citizens.
No.
I'm not even sure why this has come to the table. I think we just started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden it's spurred into something that people think might take off. I can't see this happening during our tenure here. Whether it happens in the future, we'll have to wait and see. But at this time, I'm not ready, and I don't think we are to take on another, to amalgamate with anybody. That's my piece.
No, and Marilyn, that was exactly my point, was looking for information from the province as to whether it benefited us or not. And suddenly it became let's send a letter to the province stating that we're not interested in amalgamating when we never asked for that. It was looking for information so that we might be able to potentially make a decision or to investigate. That's all I was asking for in the first place. So it did become something that it was not.
When you were talking about amalgamating, are you talking about communities towards the Dalhousie area? Because we're not going the other way. I can't see that.
Well, I would certainly hope not. No, it was Lorne, Nash Creek, communities of interest, and it was to look for information on what the benefits, potential or not, were to Beldoon. That's all I was asking for, and it seems to have blown up into somebody doing research that didn't need to be done.
Okay. Is that it? Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. I think that it was brought up, and I don't think that this council is ready for it. And whatever the future brings, I don't think, even if that's decided through the government, they decide to do it, I don't think we'll have much to say about it regardless. But I think that there would be extra costs and great, probably tax raises if we did pick up other communities in the area, but we don't know. They may decide to put us up with Bell Bay. You never know. They might put us all up Heron Bay. We don't know what the government will decide to do. It's really not our decision, I guess, at the end of it all.
Is that it? All right. Next was the discussion on unsightly premises. So I don't think there's been any doubt, as far as I can see, that we've made some progress. I know sometimes in the public eye, it's a little bit hard to discern whether or not there's actually being any progress being made on topics that are important in the community. And I can tell the public that we have this discussion a lot. There are a lot of impediments. There's a lot of red tape. It always seems that you're sort of close, you step forward, you have 2 steps back. But during the time of council, I had never heard council from 2016 to 2021 as a council member, never knew we needed an appeals committee. How in the world does that information not get to council members? Never heard that once, that we needed an appeals committee. So when we started to work on trying to get some of the premises cleaned up or taken down, or get the owner to do some work on it, suddenly the idea that we needed an appeals committee came about. So, okay, we dealt with that. We had the appeals committee. I believe in August, the appeals committee was determined and ratified. So since that time, there are some, and maybe I can get CO Lee to give some context to this. But my understanding is there are some properties that we underline or highlight as being, as needing attention, that we need the appeals committee for, and others that we don't need the appeals committee. Obviously, it's easier if you have a property where you don't need an appeals committee. So I would say, before I hand it over so we can get some more context to that, council should have, I would like, and perhaps I even have this and just overlooked it, but I would like to have a list of all those properties that we have, that we're looking at, that don't need an appeals committee, and those that do. So that we should be able to check off the ones that don't in a relatively quick fashion, so that next summer or in the spring, we get at those. If we don't need an appeals committee, then they should be down, or they should be fixed up, unless there's something I'm missing. And then, now that we have the appeals committee, either set a mandate for a number of properties. Obviously you might not reach that mandate, but at least you'd have a vague idea as to how many you think is a relatively sensible number to have down, say, or fixed up by fall of 2025. I would think that would be the approach to take. And if we do that, I would think that in comparison to other years, we would have tended to a greater number, and that the public could see that the village is on its way to providing that service in a better way. So maybe I'll turn over to CEO Lee, and then if any council members would like to pitch in on that, I'd like to hear it.
Okay, so very kind of high level. With the last council, the 4 years that I was here, there was only ever 2 files that were open, and both of those files had the Service Commission, who are our bylaw enforcement officers on dangerous and unsightly premises. Both of those files had the bylaw enforcement officer working very closely with the residents, so it never really got back to council. The Service Commission sort of continued to work with the residents until the issues were cleaned up to their satisfaction. In the instance that you're talking about right now, so this council has issued, I believe, 6 notice to complies. And all of those notice to complies that have gone out have been appealed. So it's a statutory ability that properties have that if a municipality is enforcing a cleanup or is enforcing a demolition to a structure on their property, they have the ability to appeal. So to your point, Mr. Mayor, with the previous council, my understanding was that with the previous council, the appeals committee actually sat with the service commission. The service commission had taken the initiative, and because I believe there was a regionalized like a regional dangerous and unsightly sort of blast that they were doing. So they had set up an appeals committee within the service commission so that all of the municipalities could use that appeals committee if there was appeals. Subsequently, when the new council rolls over, it's my understanding, and I've only learned this, going through the process with this council, I've learned that the appeals committee that was in place is defunct. As soon as a new council comes into place, that is absolved, and a new committee needs to be put in. So you're correct, we do have an appeals committee in place right now. The appeals committee has not had the training, which we are coordinating. It was a little bit of a juggling act. As council is aware, we do have a town hall session that's coming up that required the presence of our municipal lawyer, and the appeals committee training is also done by our municipal lawyer. So we did have, I don't know if I've seen someone, Barry, who's in the audience, so he's aware of it. There was some choreographing that had to be done for the training. So we are expecting that to happen very soon. We do have Andre coming into town, as I said, Thursday. So we hope to have a date for the appeals committee. Not just the appeals committee, it's actually staff that needs to be trained as well. Furthermore, I've been in contact with the service commission, and they actually have staff as well that needs training. So they're going to be attending our session as well. So to answer your question, as of right now, all of the notice to complies that this council has put out, all of them have been appealed. So we need to have the training done so those appeals can get in front of the appeals committee, and from there they can be actioned. If I had to estimate, I recognize that to get to this point has been quite a process, but I do believe that when the training is done and these appeals get in front of the committee, it's a relatively quick process. So to your point, Paul, I would suspect that everything that you've got that's sort of in the hopper right now would be addressed this year by the appeals committee. But that's kind of a very high level as we've been able to sort of work through it, what we've been able to understand and piece together. So hopefully that fills in a couple of gaps, but if council has any questions, I can certainly try my best to answer.
Council?
If I may, Your Worship. Just to confirm CAO Lee's point, back in 2014, yes, the appeals committee was at the planning commission. At that time, there were some unsightly premises within our community, and there were 5 properties that were tore down. That process took 90 days from the time it started to the time it finished. But again, I agree with CAO Lee's statement that that the appeals committee was at the planning commission, and that was the ease of doing it. The process that the province has basically bestowed upon many of the municipalities now has made it a little more complicated, and I also agree with the mayor's statement that we had not heard of that appeals committee right off the bat. We've only been hearing about it since the process was followed, and then we ran into a snag, and then we have to turn around and find people who are interested in the planning committee, being on that committee. And that was a process of its own. I believe we went out twice looking for a specific number of people because the first time we went out, we didn't even get the proper number. I believe we need at least 3, and there's an alternate 4 members on that committee that will be making those decisions, or looking at the appeal. But with that said, on our first effort, we did not get enough people who were interested in being on that committee. So it took another little bit of time to go out for the second time. The second time, we were extremely fortunate to find some people who are interested in the beautification of our community. And, at the end of the day, some of these properties are harder to deal with than others. As soon as someone appeals, through the process, it certainly slows everything down. Even when we had, I'll discuss basically a property that we had just recently. We struggled, even though there was not an appeal to stop us from cleaning it up. There is a process that we must follow based on how the procedure must be done. And then it took a while to find a contractor who was willing to go in and clean it up. So just because the appeals committee, there is no appeal, things don't always flow as smoothly as you might like them to. But with that all said, I will say it this way. I can only say to CAO Lee, thank you for your diligence in dealing with that issue, and it was a struggle, and I recognize that you did all you could do to make this happen, and it has finally happened that property was cleaned up, and it is a pleasure to see it. So the process isn't always easy, but the results is what we're looking for.
Anyone else?
Yes, there's a lot of red tape for anything we do, especially when it comes to property. It's encouraging that we finally have our committee together. I'm sure that we'll not understand all the training they have to go through and to get there, but I'm hoping that we are at least updated on some of the steps that needs to be done so that council will understand it a little bit more when people come to see us. And I'm encouraged what Ron was saying that they got 5 properties done in 90 days. Hopefully, like if we start in January, the appeal committee gets trained. Starting May, that we can start doing one or two a month until the ones that we have on our list done.
Anyone else? I'll finish it and I agree. Thank you, CEO Lee. That's the type of discussion we need to have more. There's a lot of people in the public who think, well, it's a dilapidated building. Council should have that down next week. But that's not the way it works. And they don't know any differently. So they think we're not doing our job. And then they get frustrated because it should be down or it should be fixed. So we need these discussions more. So the public understands this is a long process. It can be a difficult process. Excuse me. And it can be a frustrating process. But we will, by the end of 2025, have created momentum in this process. We can promise the people that, who are listening out there, that the frustrations and the unacceptable long waits for properties to be dealt with, I think, are going to be a thing of the past. So that's, thank you. It's a good discussion. Next up, the recycling program in the village. So I've had a couple of questions, and I'll ask CEO Lee and council if we can have some solutions. So I received a call from a couple of seniors at the villa in Jacket River, saying that they're not able to get their recycling picked up. Now, whether they are or not, I'm not terrifically informed about the recycling process. But the teacher who takes care of the recycling at Jacket River School has told me that he can't get our school's recycling picked up. And it's a big deal at our school. We recycle a lot. And so can we find a way to fix that or make it work so that the people at the villa, if they're not being serviced, and I'm not sure they are and they're not, I'm just bringing that complaint forward. But definitely the school, I know, is having a hard time getting the recycling picked up. And we should be able to find a way to get the school's recycling picked up. So can we deal with that? Yeah.
From the administration side, the the recycling transfer has been a disaster. We've not received, so that the residents are aware, this is something that was a provincial mandate. The recycling program was taken over by the province. However, it was from the onset, the recycling program was supposed to be a residential program only. And that was something that we found out when we had raised the concern, exactly what you're talking about, when we'd seen what was going to be picked up by Circular Materials. The contractor in Beldoon is Faro, but the program is being led by Circular Materials. And that was something that was highlighted immediately, was that the businesses and any what they qualified as being a commercial entity was not being picked up. That included schools, that included complexes, home complexes. It's even progressed to the point where we've been told as an administration by Circular Materials, like any community engagement and anything is supposed to be done by Circular Materials. So we've actually gone through, because we said, like, there's just not enough information being pushed out to the residents. We need to get stuff out there. And they've actually halted us and said, look, this stuff is supposed to be coming from us. So we're saying, well, then do it, right? So we're asking questions. There's so many questions that we have. Is recycling does it have to be in a blue bin? Can you put it in a plastic bin? If you have overflow, can that be beside it? And we're just not getting answers. And the answers that we are getting is generally that no. Can a resident have more than one blue bin, right? If you've got overflow, can you have more than two? There shouldn't be a recycling limit. So we'll continue to work with Circular Materials on that. Mr. Mayor, to your point, I have talked to other communities that were struggling with the same thing, and they did, I know that Bell Bay has sort of implemented a scaled down version of recycling with the same way that they did it before, with their own staff. So that could be a possibility. I certainly would want to talk to Public Works, and we're doing a lot of work with Public Works right now in scheduling, laying out, what we're going to be doing over the course of the summer and the winter, and having, ditching and road work and everything scheduled out. So I would certainly want to see their capabilities. We are, of course, working a person short in Public Works as well. So we have the opportunity to sort of ramp that up, but that is an option there. I know that Bell Bay has looked into that, and I believe they recently implemented that, where it was strictly for businesses on a much smaller scale than what they used to do before. So I do think that there's options that we could do, certainly that council could look at, and if council's wants to issue a directive, I certainly don't mind to do a little bit of legwork on that, see if there's see how other communities are handling it, and see what options that there might be.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry. I think that we should look into what the other communities are doing. If we need to go and pick up these areas, then we have to do it. But, we don't want to finish with a bunch of recycling. But yeah, I think we should look to see what's happening in other areas.
So what do the seniors do now at the villa and down with the recycling?
I believe, and it's the same as the school, I believe that what Circular Materials is doing is they're leaning on the school board. They're saying you need to have a recycling program in place for all of the schools in the area. The seniors complexes, depending on, whether it's NB Housing or whoever it is, that's what Circular Materials is sort of going back to the province and leaning on the province. These if it's an individual business, then, it's interesting, because if there's like a home-based business, something with a sign out front, we were trying to see how that was going to play out. Like, if somebody's got a home-based business, but they still live there, right? Is their recycling going to be picked up? And it seems like it is. So Circular Materials has provided us with a pretty comprehensive list of all of the entities that are not included, which is essentially, it's just residential that they have on there. But that's what I think that the villas are that what they're leaning on is whoever it is that's operating that. Another thing too to point out, just so council is aware, the municipality falls into this too. Our recycling doesn't get picked up, so we've had to contract that out as well. So we've had to have a garbage bin, or a recycling bin dumped here. So ironically, we're also sort of a victim of this. So but I believe that's what they're doing, Paul, is that they're going to the school board and they're looking for the Department of Education to oversee that recycling program. And subsequently, I know that our grocery store here has got a contractor in to do it, and I believe that's what they're looking for with the villas and the senior homes as well.
So was that their expectation when they took it over, that businesses and buildings that have more like apartments didn't fall under their category? So what did
Yeah.
they expect them to do with their recycling?
To be honest with you, I'm not really getting the impression that they cared that much about it. The sort of the way that it was presented to us in the meetings that we were having with the Service Commission was that from the onset, the recycling program in the Shillower region was intended to be for residential only. So over the years, whether that morphed into also doing the pickups for, in my mind, a villa is residential. An apartment complex is residential, and these are things that are not being considered for circular materials. So yes, I believe that the intent with circular materials was simply it is a residential recycling pickup, cut and dry.
Okay. So is there any, so do we have, so there's no solution, then I guess we've got to go back to the schools. Do we go back to the schools and say, go through the school board, and go back to the villas and say, go through social development, or what's the answer to the question, I guess? That's what I'm asking.
So as Marilyn had suggested, we can certainly reach out and find out what other communities are doing and how they're mitigating and what they're doing, for the local businesses or if they're doing schools at all. I would suggest that's probably the first starting point. At the same time, I would suggest, Paul, that maybe we go back to circular materials as well and say, look, we're getting requests in from this. How do we manage this? What was your expectation for how this was to unfold? And if they push it back onto us, then we can bring that back to council and have a council decision on it. I don't think that we're going to come to a solution tonight. It certainly, from my perspective, it does look like the Department of Education would probably be responsible for the schools, but we'd have to do a little bit of discussion work on that. But yeah, I would think the starting point would be see what options we have with our own staff on what we can provide, and then come up with a solution with council.
And I think probably the school boards, the school boards can take care of the schools. The villa's one that worries me more, because the people in the villa don't have any control over policy. They just want a place to put their recycling. The schools will find a way, and I have to think that the school districts should probably, if you go to the school districts and you say our school is having a hard time getting rid of our recycling, they should be able to find a way. It's a government agency, right? So it's more the villas I'm worried about in that sense. Okay, the next one up. Snowplow service and DTI communication. So this is another one where I think we have to do a better job communicating with the public. But I think we've done a fair job in communicating with the public. I think the public understands that DTI is a provincial government run entity. Our council only has, so much control over what they do. On the other hand, there's no doubt, from what I'm hearing from people, is that, and from what I see from my own experience, and I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm driving through storms or semi-storms, I get to other areas nearby, and it's like, it's 180 degrees in terms of their ability, that, they've got clean roads, and it's easy to drive in, or it's relatively easy to drive in considering the conditions. And then you come to Beldoon, and it's like, it's a whole different storm. It's not, I understand we have a long village. We do. We don't have the same setup as others. They have contractors, which means, might mean easier ability, but still, with all that, it seems to me our quality of service is substandard. Now, we pay a lot of money, and to me, it's not acceptable. And, you think of the worst case scenario when you have a bad storm, and it's not all that. We've been lucky. We've had 2 very good winters where we've had a few storms, but we all know March is what March can be like, and February can be like. So here's my suggestion. I don't think our communication with DTI is strong enough. I really don't. I don't think we impose our will strong enough. I don't think we have a good enough communication with DTI. I don't think we're in the room together enough, because I think if we're in the room together enough, we could have better service. We had, with NB Power, we had, when the liaison committee was put together, where NB Power representatives and the council and shareholders in the village met quarterly, our service with NB Power skyrocketed. Anytime there was, Councilor Burke can attest this, anytime we had outages, we understood, we knew, there was communication with anyone who called or wanted to know what was going on. We had that information at hand. We had someone we could contact right away. We have none of that with DTI as far as I can tell. So why don't we create a liaison committee, the same model after the one we work with NB Power, where we meet quarterly, once every season, and have sit around, all council members, different shareholders, and here's our expectations, here's what we want, and have that communication, line of communication strengthened. Because to me, that's going to increase the quality of our service tenfold. So I would like a directive at some point for CAO Lee to start that process, to get a liaison committee together and have those quarterly meetings with representatives from DTI. And I'll also, if you wish, talk to the minister to try and see if he can find out exactly, where the bottleneck is here, because there seems to be one. But I think if we can at least get that directive off the floor and get this liaison committee together, we can go a long way in improving our snowplow service and our DTI communication. Council?
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, your comment about NB Power is certainly a very positive one. It has been my pleasure to be able to deal with a gentleman that is dedicated to his position, and he is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've called him Sunday morning at 7 in the morning, and I've called him on holidays, and he answers his phone every single time or gets back to me within, I'll say, 30 minutes. I do get calls from residents when the power goes down, and when I get the answers, I try to return those phone calls, and I'm pretty positive that that's a pretty good statement, because I do make it my business to call people back if they call me. But I do believe that it is a very good idea to try to set up this type of liaison, because if we could open a line of communication with DTI, I believe it'd be a miracle in itself. So with that said, I do think it's a good idea and certainly should be supported.
Council?
It would be nice to have certainly a committee. I don't know how accepted that they would do the DTI, because we've been running into brick walls with them. They gave us a 1-800 number for the people to call. I don't know how fast they even move with that 1-800 number. I think it's more or less to keep track of the complaints. But yeah, I have no issue with another committee.
I agree. I think that we should get together with them and go through our issues and see how they can help us resolve them.
Well, I think that's good enough a directive for me, and I would be surprised if DTI is on the other side of the other end of the phone saying, no, that doesn't interest us. Then we should take a name and call the minister and say, you have a representative who doesn't want to sit down with council to make snowplow service better. So if that's the case, I don't think we'll run into that problem. I think DTI will, and so I guess we have a directive to do that. Yep.
Yeah, and just to reinforce your point there, Paul, I do definitely think that it would go a long way. I think there's a certain lobbying element that needs to go along with it. And as council is aware, and just so the public's aware, administration actually doesn't have a line to DTI either. We've been grouped in the same as, so if we receive a call from a resident, a complaint concerning DTI's service, administration actually has to go through the same steps as the resident does. So anytime that they call, we'll tell them, we'll give them the 1-800 number, we'll give them the email address to call, which is a ticketing system. You're correct. And to be honest with you, I have found that it's positive. I was skeptical at first, but over the course of a couple tickets being opened, it does force them to follow through on things. So anytime a resident calls, what we generally do is we'll tell them, go ahead and call the number or send them an email, open a ticket. We'll do the same thing so that we know that we've got a couple tickets addressing the same issue. So, and I would think that this would start off simply with us reaching out to DTI saying, look, we want to set up recurring meetings with council. So we'll block out a time, and as Paul said, if they're not responsive to that, then you escalate. But no, that's enough of a directive for us. That's good.
Okay, thank you. And just to finalize it, this is not an indictment of the drivers, because the drivers have a big job and they do a good job. It's not an indictment of them. I think it's higher up, and how far high up, we don't know. But I think, the drivers have to understand how hard their job is and how dedicated they are, so, to be fair. Next then is the town hall date discussion. And it's just more of less to let people know, the public know, if you're out there, we have an important meeting on Thursday night to discuss important issues. Go to our website, go to Facebook, flyers. I mean, this is a village-wide issue. This is a regional-wide issue, a provincial-wide issue. It's not a Lower Belledune issue. It's not an Archibald settlement issue or a Mitchell settlement issue. It's an issue for everyone in the region. We're not the only village or municipality who is dealing with this issue and had been dealing with this issue for years. And all the tributaries of issues that run from that, because anytime you get an issue like this, there are a number of offsetting issues that appear. So this is not just one based, but Thursday night, I believe it's at the rec center at 6:30 start. You should be getting a flyer in the mail. Check our website, go through it, find all the details, and show up, because I'll give you an example. In 2017, when I was on council, we had an issue concerning a rural plan. And council started those discussions in January of 2017, I believe. And it was like nothing. Nobody appeared at meetings. Nobody seemed interested. A lot of them were in-camera meetings anyway, but some were public. There was always some discussion on it. By August, we had people down the side of the building. We couldn't fill the seats. We didn't have enough seats to fill all the people. And then we had a town hall in October of 2017, and the place was full, and we had some experts there who were willing to answer questions. And it was the best thing that we could have done, because everyone heard the same information. Everyone heard the same questions. Everyone got the same information in real time. So when council came back to make a final vote, and I believe again in October of 2017, everyone knew what the vote was for. Everyone knew the information that they had received. Everyone knew the implications, and we made a vote. No one could say afterward they didn't have an opportunity to ask a question. No one could say they didn't have the opportunity to get information. So this is the opportunity to do that, and I hope everyone takes advantage and is there on Thursday night. We have, I think, a good lineup in terms of presenters or people willing to take questions. So I don't think there's any question that anyone could have that can't be answered in some form or matter. So I'll leave it at that, but I just wanted to reiterate how important it was. Anyone on council wish to add? Then we'll move on. Chaleur Regional Service Commission update. It's not as much a commission service update yet. I'll probably start those, but I just want to let people know, again, information is so important. The Service Commission, if you ask people on the street about the Service Commission, they really don't know anything about the Service Commission, yet the Service Commission has a deep impact on our daily lives. And it's not just planning. The Service Commission at one point was about planning. If you wanted to build something, at some point you were going to deal with the Service Commission. It's not like that anymore. The Service Commission has mandates in economic development, in tourism, in planning, a number of recreational facilities, shared infrastructure costs. All of those have an impact. So I would ask you to go to the website, the Chaleur Regional Service Commission website, and read it and look at it and become informed about it, because it will have an impact on almost everything that you do. So starting next month, I'll probably try and come with some updates, some more meat to the discussion. But it's just to let you know, this is an important board, and you should be a little bit more familiar with it. And one of the things I did notice when I first came on council here, the Service Commission and the Village of Belledune tended to have a poor relationship. It was a poor relationship. And I told the commission, people at the commission that. I said, a lot of times when you send people here to Belledune, it's a negative, always it starts off with a negative tone. You can't do this. You can't do that. And they say, if that's your tone when you show up, you're never going to have a good relationship. So that has to change. And I think it has changed somewhat. But the Service Commission is very important. So become aware of what it does. And we have two council members who are here. I sit as the chair. Councilor Robinson is on the board as well. So, and Bell Bay and Bathurst are on it. But you can see all that stuff whenever you read the website. Council? No? Okay. Then two quick ones. The upcoming ministers meeting in the north. So starting the 20th, next Monday in Bathurst, Liberal, the provincial governing body of the day, the Liberals, will have I'm going to call it a caucus meeting here in the north. All the ministers are going to be here. So this is an opportunity for us as a council. I think we have to try and get and talk to as many ministers as possible. I plan on doing that. I know I already have a meeting through the Commission on Environment and Local Government, Aaron Kennedy. And there are others too. So, we should be able to come back. This is an opportunity to network. And so I hope council, I'm going to try and find some ways to get Mr. Marco LeBlanc to set up meetings. And so this is our opportunity to advocate. Like, we're talking about snowplow service, and we're talking about recycling service. We're talking about planning. We're talking about other things where the province has a mandate and input. And we should advocate as much as we possibly can. So it's just to let you know, it's important for the north that, I've talked a couple of times about our relationship with the provincial government. We have an opportunity to have a real good relationship with this government, I feel. I know everyone in this, right? So this is something we need to take advantage of to bring funding to our village and other matters. So that's an important meeting, and I hope to get a chance to bring back some good news, and council members too. Anyone?
You said next Monday? Couple of days they're in Bathurst?
They'll be here for 3.
Okay.
No,
I will seek out that information.
Yeah, and I think, it's an opportunity. If you have a specific department that interests you, right? It might, I mean, you both know, you all know Marco quite well. You know, I might get in touch with him and say, you know, this is the department I'd really like to be able to get in touch with, and we might be able to do that. It's an opportunity, I think. And the last one, speaking of advocates for the North, because the Pabineau First Nation is a great advocate for the North, wanted to congratulate them on today's opening of Harvey's in Bathurst. They, you know, they're go-getters, and today they have a new business, and then they don't stop. They help us with the port. They're great, and just congratulations to Terry Richardson, Jim Richardson, and the council. Councilor Burke was there today. Maybe you can.
Yeah, it certainly was very well attended. You know, there were representation from Bathurst, from Heron Bay, from Bell Bay, from Beldoon. Also, the Port of Beldoon was present with Denny Caron, and the Deputy Premier was there in Rene Legacy. You know, it was an opportunity to basically talk to all these people and seeing how things were going, but you know, the First Nations are very, very positive, and you know, they are economically directed towards seeing the North have a much more positive light. At the end of the day, that is attributed, you know, basically to the people that we deal with, and Chief Richardson and Councillor Richardson, which is his brother, one Jim, one you know, Richard. At the end of the day, these people have a vision. They've worked very closely with the municipalities, have a very strong business relationship with the Port of Beldoon, and Denny Caron has a very strong relationship with the First Nations and basically the Deputy Premier and the Premier. So it went extremely well there. You know, there was probably a crowd of, I'm going to estimate it, between 40 and 50 people. So you know, they recognize what the First Nations bring to the community and the economic development of our region. So it was certainly a very informative and very fun-filled morning. So
Yeah, thank you. That's it for me. Administration, have anything? No. So if there's nothing else to add, we can adjourn.
M 2025-01-13-2, that the meeting is adjourned at 7:58.
Seconder,
I'll second it.
all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed, meeting adjourned.